All right, we've got maybe 3 more pages here of rhythmic stuff that I wanted to do, and I'm going to try to do this all in one lesson. So here we go. Page 65, we're talking about time signatures, and so far we've always talked about numbers. 3/4, 4/4, 5/8. In this example, they're replacing the numbers with something else. So if you look at the first line, it says the time signature 4/4 can also be written with a C, which we call common time. Basically, 4/4 being so popular is not the right word. It's so common, thus the name common time. It's used a lot. So you will see sometimes the C in the spot where the time signature goes, and that just means common time or 4/4. That's all it means. There's another version of this that's got the C with a line going down, which is called cut time or à la brève. And it's interesting because essentially the note values don't change because of, math. So let's check this out on the whiteboard. Okay, here's 4/4. So in 4/4 time, the quarter note gets 1 beat. So if we have 4 quarter notes, basically we're just counting to 4, no big deal, right? If you look at half notes in 4/4 time, you can put 2 inside of a measure. And when we count them, we would say 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Because a half note gets twice as much as a quarter note. Quarter notes get the beat. That's cool. So in music that has a feeling of 4, you might write a time signature that sort of reinforces the idea or the counting of 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. If it's kind of moving at that tempo or in that feeling, then we might write it as 4/4, or in this case, common time, right? So I can replace the 4/4 with a C. Call it common time. Cut time is this. Where's my eraser? Cut time is 2/2, which is mathematically the same, but check it out. When we count it, the half notes here get 1 beat, right? Bottom number, what kind of note gets 1 beat? So we count this as 1, 2, meaning that if I put quarter notes in something that's 2/2, how do we count it? 1 and 2 and, right? Well, why would we do this? Why would we have something in 2/2 time? Well, it's because the music has a feeling of 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, ba 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 da ba 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 baby beep bing dinky dibby dibby ding 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Like a march. They have a feeling of 2. And then it's like each bar kind of resets. And so that music might be written in cut time. So 2/2, which has a feeling of 2, has a feeling of the half note, we call cut time. So mathematically the same, but the music feels different. So we write it in either 4 or 2. Sometimes we write in a different key, in a different time signature because the music has so many complicated rhythms that we want to write it in the simplest notation possible. So instead of writing something in a time signature with a lot of 16th notes, we might move it to a signature where we can change the 16th notes and expand them to be more like 8th notes, and it's easier to count. So a lot of the music that I like to play, Latin and Caribbean music, if we write a chart out, instead of writing it in 4/4, we'll write it in cut time or in 2, because then all the 16th notes become 8th note rhythms, and it's just much easier to read. So there's different reasons why we do this, but basically the lesson is 4/4 is common time, 2/2 is cut time, and hopefully that helps to explain why. Okay, so now we're on page 68. A little bit more about time signatures here. For the most part, I think in the class we've had as the bottom number of the time signature probably a 4, sometimes a 2, but the book addresses the 8th time signatures, 3/8 and 6/8, and really there's nothing unusual or all that different about it. You just have to remember that first rule, which is whatever the bottom number is in a time signature, that becomes the count or the beat. So if you have an 8, it means that the 8th note is going to receive 1 count or 1 beat. And so we have some examples. Here's an example of 3/8. 3 beats in a measure, 8th note gets 1 beat or 1 count. So we count it as 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So 8th note gets a count, 8th note rest gets 1 count. Here, a quarter note gets 2 counts because the 8th note is 1 beat. So you just have to kind of pay attention to that bottom number of your time signature, and it can be a little bit confusing. But if you just remember that, then it's not really that big of a deal. Look right here. Now we're in 6/8. It starts with a quarter note. So now, because we've changed that bottom number of the time signature, the quarter note is sort of acting like what a half note feels like, in 4/4, let's say. It gets 2 counts. So the quarter note is 1, 2. 8th note is 3. Quarter note is 4, 5. 8th rest is 6. Here we have a quarter rest that gets 2 counts. And then we have a note on 3, 2 counts, a note on 6. If you look at the bottom of page 68, they've got some little exercises where you have to figure out which measures have the correct number of beats in them. So, like, that's fine, right? Quarter with a dot would basically be 3 beats because the quarter note gets 2, the dot adds 1 more. So that's fine. Measure number 2, not so fine. We've got 1, 2, 3, and then still another quarter rest, which is 2 more counts. So that would actually be 5 in that example. So no good. Here we have an 8th note, that's 1 count. Quarter note, that's 2 counts. And then another 8th rest. So that's too many. So that one's also no good. Last measure, 3/8 notes, no problem. So see if you can go through and do some of the exercises on the bottom of page 68. And yeah, it's not that hard. You can practice doing some of these rhythms. And that's 3/8 and 6/8. By the way, you can also do this in other top numbers, right? So this would be a bar of 5/8, where each 8th note gets 1 count. These can be kind of fun because a lot of times we group them into groupings of 2s and 3s. So you have a group of 3 and a group of 2, and the music kind of moves with that feeling of 3 and 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or it could be 2 and 3, whatever. So this stuff can be kind of fun. Like, the more you get into learning about rhythm and can read some of these things, playing some of the odder time signatures is kind of fun. My favorite is playing in 7. So I've actually written a few tunes where the song is in 7. And as a drummer, that's really, really fun to play. So don't be intimidated by the 8th time signatures. They're actually really cool, and they can be really fun to play. All right, that's good. I'll move on from there. Okay, finally, just to confuse you, we learn about the triplet. So we just did a whole lesson on 3/8 time, 6/8 time, where we had 3/8 notes in a bar and we counted them 1, 2, 3. So this is not that. Triplets are really just one type of note grouping where we're taking a group of notes and we're putting them in the space where there would normally be, let's say, only 2 notes or only 1 note. So in the case of an 8th note triplet, we're grouping 3 notes together and we're saying we're going to play those in the space, in the same amount of space and time that you would normally play 2 8th notes. How does that work? Doesn't seem like it could be possible. Well, first of all, let me just bring your attention to the fact that on these 3 8th notes, they've added the number 3. So if that number 3 isn't there, as a musician, I have to interpret those 3 8th notes as just being 3 regular 8th notes. But as soon as you put the 3, and sometimes we'll even add a bracket like this. So it has the number 3 and it has the bracket. And that tells me that it's a triplet. It's a multiple note grouping. So again, what we're saying is that those 3 notes take up the same amount of space that normally you would have only 2 notes. So let me show you how this works. All right, on the bottom, I have 2 8th notes, a quarter and a half. If I write out the counting, it looks like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Sounds like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Maybe I'll do it on the piano so you can hear the length of the notes. 3 and 4 and. Cool. In the top example, we're putting a bracket and a number with 3 8th notes, and we're saying in the space where I normally play the 2 8th notes, I'm now going to play 3. So here's the pulse. That's the first 2 beats, right? On the bottom. Now I'm going to put 3 in there. So I had to speed them up. And so I'm squishing together and I'm kind of speeding up those 3 notes, but my pulse doesn't change. Right? There's the triplet. Here's the 8th note. Triplets. So I'm kind of compressing them and making them fit in the same amount of space where I would normally play just 2 notes. So back to the book. At the top here, they show you 3 against 2. So on the bottom, we have 8th notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. I'm going to keep that going, and I'm going to play triplets kind of against it. 1, 2, ready, and. So we have 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So my hands are together on the downbeat, on the beginning of each grouping. Right, they land together, just like they do on the page. But then the 3 is happening a little faster than the 2 in order to kind of squeeze them all in. If you look at the book, there's this march from the Nutcracker Suite, and it's got 8th notes, regular 8th notes, and then it has some triplets in there. 2 and 3 and 4 and. 1 triplet 3 and. Right? 1 triplet 3 4 1 2 3 4. So we're just kind of compressing those 3 8th notes and putting them in the space where there would normally be 2. All right. I'm going to see if I can come up with some, maybe some online examples of the triplet thing, being a drummer, other than playing on my chest, but that works too. So give it a go. I would say the counting is such that I actually say the word triplet when I count these rhythms. So if I'm counting eighth notes, I would call them 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and triplets, I'm actually going to say the word triplet after the number. 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, like that. 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Keeping the pulse the same is key to making it accurate and actually be a triplet or not. It's not easy, so see if you can do it, and I'll see you on the next lesson.